Mark 1 Charlie.
Ladies and gentlemen,
I'm full of optimism.
Einstein's theory of relativity.
We're still seeing it quite well through that haze.
T-minus 37 seconds.
The fight is growing confident.
E equals MC.
That all men are created equal.
About the future innovations.
And growing strength in the air.
Tear down this rubbish.
Something's happening coming up on staging.
This is Finding Your Frequency with your hosts, Jeff Spinard and Ryan Treasure. It's time to speak up, share your voice, and hear from the thought leaders.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another fantastic episode of Finding Your Frequency. I'm your host, Ryan Treasure, and we have a great show for you guys today. You know, over the last several weeks, we've been doing interviews with some of the 7 Rich Dad advisors to Robert Kiyosaki with Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And, you know, we've been learning all about entrepreneurism. We've been learning about taxes. We've been learning about, selling with Mr. Blair and the sales dogs and the approach to the mentality of which type of dog are you in the fight of selling. And we all know that the most important component of any business is making the sale, because the sale leads to the revenue. And so, well, we're going to talk a little bit about that and kind of expand in a little bit of a different type of way as we talk to Gregg Champion, who is a branding expert working with top consumer brands, major television networks, and professional sports teams over the last 15 years. He has focused on selective startup ventures as an investor, an advisor, educator, and a startup coach. And of course, he's a TEDx speaker who's been in recovery for 20 years after nearly ruining his life with drugs and alcohol. He got clean and sober, and we want to definitely hear that story. Gregg, welcome to the show.
Hey, Ryan, thank you so much to have me on as a guest, and I look forward to this. And I know we talked before the interview about Phoenix. We both have Phoenix roots, and it's good to be back on the air in Phoenix, I guess you would say.
Yeah. You know, Phoenix is a weird place for me. I've been here my whole life. I grew up here. I was in the military. I traveled all around the world. I've traveled all around the world for media stuff for Voice America in my 16 years here as well. And you know, the funniest thing is when I'm flying back home and I look out the window and I just see that desert, that brown color. I don't know what it is, but it's just like, yep, that's my home. That's where I'm at. You know, and even being in, you know, whether it be LA or San Diego or Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, East Coast, and several places where they got trees and it's green and it's beautiful and beaches and all that, I still love coming back home to Phoenix.
Yeah, it is a special place. My favorite time of the year in Phoenix is the monsoon season. It's just, I mean, talk about God showing up. You know, it's just right. I mean, it's a beautiful, you're laying out, it's 107 degrees, 110 degrees. And all of a sudden, right around 4:30, 5 o'clock, here comes those storm clouds. And they dump that warm rain on you, and then they're gone in an hour. It's the coolest thing.
Yeah, no, I think your love for the monsoon and mine are definitely equal. And for me, you know, monsoon is one of my favorite parts of being in Phoenix. But my favorite part of Phoenix is fall. I like October and November in Arizona, in Phoenix specifically. It's great. And so hence the monsoons to me are nature's signal saying, hey guys, guess what?
Here comes fall.
Yeah, summer's going to be over soon. We're going to make it real humid for August, and then we're going to start making it beautiful in September.
Yeah, good.
So, Gregg, you know, you have a really impactful story. You have, you know, all of this years of sobriety, being in recovery, which is just absolutely wonderful. Congratulations and kudos on being able to maintain that. I've seen lots of people in my life go through, you know, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, a lot of those scenarios. And it really does take a lot of effort to pull yourself out of that hole. And something that I learned recently because of a family member, and it's, you know, no matter how much I tried to help that person, I couldn't really do anything until they were ready to help themselves. You know, so that's the magic of it. The individual has to help themselves. What I have found, Ryan, is that a lot of people think that alcohol and drugs are the problem. It's actually the solution. The problem is inside you. There's some sort of drama, trauma, or pain deep down inside of you that you haven't worked out. You haven't gotten out. And I call it the backpack of shame. Something from your childhood, something from your teenage years, some school teacher or coach scolded you in a way that
that you had to hide a secret. And in the program, we talk about people, they're only as sick as their secrets. And I think that this person you're talking about has a lot of secrets, and they're not willing to get them out either through a therapist or a 12-step group, or even through, even through a trusted friend. And what I can tell you is that, the drugs and alcohol, especially in this country, is everywhere. If I can give you a stat, this is just a mind-blowing stat. So the United States makes up 5% of the world's population. We make up 95% of prescription pill sales.
That's insane.
Right?
I mean, literally insane. You and I were talking off air just a little bit. I was telling you about a show that I'm the executive producer for called Landmark Recovery Radio. And I was having a discussion with their marketing person, and she was saying something to me like, we were talking about press releases and, that kind of thing. And she had mentioned to me, well, I only put out a press release when we're opening up a new facility where, like things are, like I feel it's really big. And I had to stop her and I had to say, I disagree with you. Every story of every person that makes it to recovery, I feel is press release worthy, because when you look at today, especially with drugs like fentanyl, right? Living here in Arizona, I just saw they had like a $3 million, bust of fentanyl pills coming over from Mexico, and, that opioid epidemic. And we've done shows on how CBD helps people off of the opioids and those types of things. And I just feel like, anytime that you're able to, throw up a flag of victory and showcase that you've won this battle, that's something that's important, not only for the person that's, in recovery, but, also for the mechanism that helped them get there, shining light on that so that way people know that there is always some type of hope that's available, because addiction is probably one of the biggest problems that plagues the United States of America from a socioeconomic standpoint.
Oh, for sure. And I love that you talk about the solution and the tent pole, the beacon, and I consider myself a beacon. People always ask me, why are you so open with your recovery? And I said, because guess what? All it takes is one person to hear my story, to see my path, and want to buy into it, And the reasons for me to come on a show like yours is for that, to hear my story. I went to Arizona State. I was a complete frat boy knucklehead while I was there, and I took that lifestyle out into the real world. And within a short amount of time, between age 22 and 24, I got my ass handed to me several times. Drugs and alcohol plus Gregg equal jail. And so, Ryan, I went to jail 8 times in 2 years. Now, this is a kid who grew up with greatest generation parents. My stepfather fought on D-Day. I was in private Catholic school, and I got a degree, right? That type of kid does not get arrested 8 times in 2 years. And what's crazy is that, I was facing 5 years in prison based upon that last arrest. And so I was at a crossroads. And I tell people all the time, I live in the Pacific Palisades now, and I say, look, I went from prison to the Palisades. I say that in a joking manner to really give you a flight path, a flight path of here's this kid who is facing prison, and all of a sudden he gets sober. He gets sober for 90 days. He gets sober for a year. He gets sober for 3 years. And before you know it, and what I did is I came to Hollywood and I slept on a friend's couch for 4 months. I started going to 12-step meetings. And what happened is I fell in love with Hollywood, and I got a job as a production assistant. And I looked up and I go, okay, there's success. And I began going from a production assistant to an assistant manager to an assistant producer, and working my way up at companies like this, Fox, NBC, DreamWorks. And what I was doing, and this is what I was doing. Instead of going out on Thursday nights, right, when my friends were, I would stay in and work on scripts. Instead of being hungover on Saturday mornings, like all my friends, I would go into the office and print those scripts out and get them distributed out. So a big thing for me is shifting addiction to passion. And so those hours I would waste in my addiction, I was now putting forward in my passion. And Ryan, I don't need to tell you this, but you do that 8 hours a week times 52 weeks, you're going to have something done.
Yeah,
you're going to have a house.
Yeah. You'll definitely have some level of success. That's an interesting point. I'm gonna talk about like smoking cigarettes as an addiction, right?
Okay.
So I smoke. And so that's my one of my crutches, and I'm always trying to figure out, okay, I got to quit smoking. It's bad for my health. I don't want to get cancer, all that fun stuff. But I sat down and I was like, all right, well, you smoke X amount of cigarettes in a day, and then it takes you like 5 minutes to smoke one. I multiplied that by 365 days for the year, and I'm going, wow, you know how much more things I could achieve by not smoking cigarettes, just from a time perspective. I mean, take away the monetary component of what you spend on a pack of smokes, but just even that, like the time, and that's exactly right. You find yourself during recovery having an immense amount of more time to follow your passions, and
totally.
I think it's helpful too. I mean, I think the addictive nature or addictive personality is kind of inherent in the human genome in the first place, but it's just kind of like, what is that addiction? Is it, is it drugs and alcohol, or is it, you're addicted to your job? And so that's, I think, a great outlet. Like you mentioned, if you can take that time that you might say, oh, I'm going to go, drink alcohol or do some drugs or whatever, and, shift that into something of passion where you can be creative. You can use, the human potential for storytelling and technology and all of that, and kind of focus back into, not necessarily yourself, but a little bit of yourself, right? Focusing into yourself in order to get something exponentially better than you had before is just an amazing thing, and something that, I think, even if you're not addicted to drugs and alcohol, it's something that, you have to sit back and reflect on as a human being of, am I using the time that I have on this earth in the most appropriate manner to be the best for me?
I echo your sentiment exactly. So let me just give you a situation to which, when I meet with someone I'm mentoring or someone I'm coaching, here's the first question I ask them, Ryan. What do you want to be when you grow up? Right? We were asked that when we were 5 years old, right? And for a lot of people, what happens is they have a certain dream or a certain passion or a certain skill set, right? And when drugs and alcohol get involved, right, all that gets squashed. So if I've taken drugs and alcohol away, guess what's ready to be opened up again? And so I have helped people become musicians. I've helped people become actors. I've helped people become real estate agents or get into design, because that's where they left off before drugs and alcohol came into their life. And so when I ask somebody, what do you want to be when you grow up? That's one part of it, is the career, but also a lot of people, let me ask you, Ryan, again, I'm going to be, you started using drugs and alcohol when you were 12 or 13, right?
I'm not really drugs, not really alcohol. I didn't start drinking until I got home from the Navy. Okay. Well, let me just say, the most people I come in contact with began drinking around 12 or 13. And it's really a three-legged stool. One, they're starting to come into puberty. Two, they start freshman year. And three, it's finally available. Yeah, that's right? When I started smoking cigarettes. I think I was 12. Yeah.
Okay. So, and what happens is there's some sort of childhood pain or trauma. And there's a great guru called Gabor Mate. You should look him up. He's a Canadian doctor of psychology. Mm-hmm. And he always says all addiction is related to some pain. And so 90% of it's back there. And so what I want to convey to your audience is that what I try to ask people to do is, when I'm working with them, I say, hey, what'd you do before drugs and alcohol? And so what that means is, what'd you do for joy? And so what happens is a lot of people say, hey, I was an artist. I was a musician. I played soccer. Well, let's go do those same things again. As for example, for me, before I took drugs and alcohol, I loved to body surf. I loved to skateboard, and I loved mint chocolate chip milkshakes from Baskin Robbins. Okay? All right, my friend?
Oh, yeah.
So here I am. I'm 50 years old now. I still body surf. I skateboard with my 9-year-old little girl, and I have at least 2 mint chocolate chip milkshakes a week, because they bring me joy. And a lot of our listeners and a lot of the people I work with lose that joy, right, at some point in their life. And I love how you touch upon finding your passion on what to do for a living, because clearly you're sitting in a chair, you would do this for free. Obviously you make some money, right? But you enjoy engaging the human connection, information transfer, data downloads, all that stuff.
100%.
Right? And so you walk out of there with your heels clicking because you're doing what you wanted to do. And so I really believe that is the disconnect with America, is we don't give people opportunities to do what they want to do or pursue them, because some parents like, you got to be a lawyer. You got to be a lawyer. Meanwhile, the kid's a brilliant artist, you know? And,
well, and you bring up a good point too, especially when you talk about art. You know, I feel like, you know, you look at schools nowadays too, right? And everybody's like STEM, science, engineering, technology, math. And I'm like, no, STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art, and math, you know, because, you know, there's something that artificial intelligence and machine learning and computers cannot do. And that's be the artistic mind of a human. I was at, I know you were saying you love Hollywood. I was at the Infinity Festival in Hollywood, what was it, in November. And while we were at the event, right, they were showcasing new technologies by DreamWorks and different production companies. And what I thought was interesting is they made a comment that said that, you know, the technology doesn't create the story creates the technology. And so it was kind of like, you know, when DreamWorks is saying, hey, we have this cool story, and in order to do this story, we have to make new technology to be able to accomplish the production value to make the story happen. It was really cool. And then they brought out this, it was an AI art machine, and it reads, you know, like it was a painter, and he was painting, and the AI machine had read all, you know, 950 pieces that he had ever painted, right? And then it would make suggestions to him on how to paint. And it was funny, as I raised my hand and I asked a question, and I said, well, what do your paintings come out like if you don't use the AI to give you, you know, some you know, guidance on what you're making, you know? And he showed me a picture of what he does by himself versus what he does with AI assistance. And it was like, see, this is exactly what I'm talking about. The things that you make here out of your own mind with no assistance from computer-aided technologies are so much far superior than this thing that you're making right now with assisted AI. And I think a lot of that gets lost in translation when you have, you know, you got to be a doctor, you got to be a this, you got to be a that. You know, I'm a father of a 6-year-old daughter. I just say, what do you want to do? Let's go do that. You want to be a ballet dancer? Let's go take ballet classes. You want to do karate? Let's go take karate. You want to do soccer? Let's do soccer. I'll coach the team, whatever. Because like you said, it's like what gives her joy, right? And I want to allow her the opportunity as a child to experience anything and everything possible so she can make an informed decision later in life on what brings her that joy.
So let me just give you a litmus test of what we did here at Startup Recovery. So we had a young man come in last summer. He ended up staying with us for 5 months as a resident here at our facility. And he was a heroin addict, needle in the arm heroin addict for 9 years. But when he was sober here off and on, he was a wonderful painter, went to fine arts school. And so we took one of our garages and turned it into a studio for him. In the 5 months he was here, he remained sober. That's the number one thing. He also banged out 22 paintings, to which we sold 4 of them to my network of friends, into their houses, into their offices. One of them actually hangs in United Talent Agency here in Beverly Hills.
That's awesome.
And so he truly shifted his addiction to his passion. He comes from a father who wanted him to be something, you know, I want you to be a lawyer. And we sort of cut the father off and said, this kid's got to do what he's got to do. Now, granted, he's the artist, right? And he needs some mentors like my partner, Jeff Van, and myself are. And so we're business mentors. We handle his invoicing. We handle his website building, all that kind of stuff. So he can just focus on the art.
Yeah, he keeps it all right in his own wheelhouse.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
As an operations guy, I'm the VP of operations for Voice America. I'm constantly like, don't do that. You're not. I'm not being mean. you're not the best person for this. You are absolutely the best person for this. Let's stick you here in a place where we know you can succeed. It's almost like being a football coach, right? And it's like, you can have scheme all you want with playing a football game, but if your players can't execute the scheme, then you're going to lose games. And so you have to make sure that your scheme fits the skill level of the players, right? And allowing those people to ride in their wheelhouse and do that. As you talk about your recovery path and the people that you work with, how did you find your frequency in the startup business, and how did you take your passion for startups and business and entrepreneurship and your recovery and blend that together? How did that all come about?
Well, some people say, are entrepreneurs born or they made? Okay. I'm going to tell you what I think entrepreneurs are born, and here's why. When I was living in Phoenix, I washed cars. I had a paper route. And this is at 7, 8, 9 years old. I was out there hustling. When I was at ASU, I was the guy who walked around the dorm rooms with T-shirts. Nice. That had funny sayings on them, depending on what football team was coming in. What I will say is, once I got to LA, I did work for some big companies, and it was a good foundation to see how big companies do things right and see how big companies do things wrong. And ultimately, when you're talking about finding your frequency, here's what I want to tell you is that I call it the it factor. And I'm sure you've heard that before. What is your it factor? What's your superpower? And so, my last name is Champion. And what I will tell you is part of my recovery is trying to live up to that last name on a daily basis. Ryan, believe me, it's tough. Okay. But what happened to me about 5 or 6 years ago is I had a breakthrough, and I looked up the word champion. If you look at the definition of champion, the first one means winner, leader, victorious. But if you look at the second one, the second definition under it says someone who champions a cause, or a mentor. And so that is really what my it factor is. That's what my frequency is I champion the cause. So that could be a startup who comes to me and says, hey, we have a product or service. Will you be on our advisory board and help us put out our 10-page pitch deck?
Yeah.
That I can be a mentor to a USC student who has a product or service they want to try out. And I certainly can be a mentor or person in recovery to someone who's in early recovery. Again, I'm living up to my last name, that second definition, someone who empowers or champions the cause. And so my frequency is my last name. I can't tell you how many times I go to the bank and people go, oh, what a great last name, or where do I get a name like that? And so what I want to do is I want to live up to that. And so what happened out of that was I would work for Fox, DreamWorks, NBC, Fox Sports. And eventually in 2006, I opened up my own branding company called Champion Media and Entertainment. And people kept saying to me, what a great name to start a name with. And out of that company came building websites, doing videos, doing branding, doing contests. I'll tell you a little story of how I got this. Again, here's the entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
I'm working for Fox Sports. I'm on the red carpet with a crew. I have a microphone and I have my video camera. And this guy comes up to me and goes, hey, I've seen you around for a few months. I really like the way you handle A-list talent. I really like how you handle a crew. It seems like you do a good job. I just got a job as a vice president at a very nice company. I go, man, if you had your own company, I think I'd be your first client. So I went home that night and I got real nervous. Like, I had my own company. I'm not ready for my own company. But then I sat with it and I go, well, what would it look like? Well, I knew I wanted to name it Champion Media, right, and Entertainment. I knew I needed a good logo and I needed a good website. So I called a friend of mine up who was a graphic designer. Again, we have to acquire our superheroes, things that, right? You have to acquire your A-team. The smartest guy in the room hires the smartest people, right?
Yeah, so if you're the owner of the business and you're the smartest guy in the room, you're not doing your job right.
Amen, Ryan. So I get a friend over, and all of a sudden he says, "Let's make a black website." He goes, "What's your value? What value can you show this person?" And what it is, I had a bunch of pictures of me working with Tiger Woods, Tony Hawk, Heidi Klum, right?
Yeah.
Shaq. So we put those pictures on the site. back in 2006, the number one show on television was Entourage, right? And so I took that logo font, the lowercase Entourage, and I turned it into Champion, right? And all of a sudden, we sent over a website to this guy. This guy's vice president of Doritos. and all of a sudden, a day later, it comes back, congratulations, I'm your first client.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. You know, go ahead. We were talking, with Blair last week and, talking about sales, and he wrote a book. I don't have it on my desk now, but it was about how you deal with, that inner voice, especially as an entrepreneur, right? People work these 9-to-5 jobs. They're, living for somebody else's dream, so to speak. Yep. And a lot of the limiting behavior behind not doing your own business are these things that come up in your own mind that are like, I'm not good enough. I don't have enough money. I don't know enough people. My network's not big enough. And so, those self-limiting kind of beliefs. And so when we were talking about that and you brought up, you had one of those epiphanies and you said, I don't know if I can do this. But then you stopped and you didn't let your emotions cloud your intelligence, right? And so you were able to then step by step go through the intelligence component and say, well, wait a minute, no, I have been with Shaq and I have done these things and I have done that. So I can do this. Let's go do this. So that's what I think is amazing, about the story of the beginning of your company is, that you had those limiting factors, but you didn't allow that to overcome you. And there's a lot of people out there that are sitting here listening to this show or listening to other podcasts about entrepreneurship, thinking about the next great idea that they have, but they just didn't take that leap of faith. What would you say to somebody who's sitting there right now thinking that in their head to get past that portion to go actually follow their passion and get out and do it?
Well, I think it's really 4 factors. I think you have to have the idea, right? Have the crazy idea, 2, you have to go seek advice, raise your hand in a classroom. I sometimes raise my hand in a 12-step meeting, I'm going through this problem. And next thing you know, there's somebody over in the corner who comes and helps me. Number 3, you got to put some elbow grease to it. You got to put some time away from your 9-to-5 job, right? And go put in a Saturday and a Sunday building your whatever you think you're going to build, right? And then last but not least, I think you need to find a mentor. I think you need to find a mentor in the industry, because here's what I found about mentors. They teach me the landmines, right? And the puddles to avoid. Because ultimately what you want to do as a mentor is give your mentee the path of least resistance. Yeah. And what I want to say to you is I never would have been able to do Champion Media Entertainment if I had not had a mentor. I will tell you, I did not have a mentor my first 6 years in Hollywood. I was just doing it on my own self-will. And that year that I got a mentor, his name was Gary Considine from NBC, I was able to open up my shop within a year. Because here's what I know about bosses, Ryan. We have good bosses and we have bad bosses. And guess what? We learn more from the bad bosses because we learn what not to do.
100% correct on that one. Yeah. You talk about mentorship and, for me, I'm in the media space as well. I VP operations of an internet radio station, and we come across the gurus, right, all the time. The person who's the mentor for hire, the mentor for sale. I have a steps of a program you can get on, and I can be your mentor. And I think a lot of that space is clouded right now because how do you know as an individual that you're spending the proper time with a mentor and that mentor is guiding you in an appropriate direction? And does the mentorship, I know this is a long question.
No, it's good.
And does the mentorship, does that come with a price tag? Like are people paying for mentorship, or is mentorship something more of a a give back from the mentor because they've been there and done that, and they see something of themselves maybe in the person they're mentoring, and so they offer that as a service. Or because I've always had that question in my mind, especially when people talk about their mentors, and then I find out, I'm like, oh, you paid this person $100,000 to be your mentor, and I'm like, is that really a mentor?
No. So I love this topic. It really speaks to me. I can give you 3 points of reference. So for me, what I do is, first of all, you're being of service to another person. And when being of service to another person, you do not expect anything back in any way. Okay. And the reason why you're doing that is because someone did it for you. It's your way of creating that cycle of life in terms of business.
Yeah.
Number 2, you ask, hey, what's the proof in the pudding? Well, I say to my mentees, I say, look, I'm never going to hurt you. Nothing I say to you, nothing I do to you is ever going to hurt you. Every bit of knowledge I'm going to give you has been tested by me. I have had this red flag come up. I've had to hire and fire people. I've had this type of toxic client, right?
Yeah.
So I'm giving you stuff that has been tried and true, right? And then the last part plays into my recovery. So here at Startup Recovery, every Thursday night, we have sober mentors come up to the house. And they come, we hold a 12-step meeting, and they talk about their experience, strength, and hope. But what's happening is, Ryan, these sober mentors do it for fun and for free. And here's what's cool. They are captains of industry. They are Oscar winners. They are distinguished writers. And so what the person sitting there, the young person in recovery, is looking at is, hey, you're showing me the flight path of how if I get sober, right, I can have a great career. And so you can see both in my own world, being a mentor and having mentors, also the service element that of, hey, we do this for fun and for free. And now in my recovery world, because what I want them to do is I want them to see someone who does long-term sobriety and long-term success. Because in my world, here's who are my mentors are. They have to have these 3 categories: long-term sobriety, long-term success, and long-term marriages. Those are the 3 things that keep me grounded and in Gregg lane, because what I will tell you this, Ryan, the obsession of drugs and alcohol has left me. It really has. I will never do drugs. I will never drink again. But the obsession to obsess has never left me.
Right.
And I want you to think about that for a second. So all of a sudden, here comes the Super Bowl, right? I can go gamble $5,000 away quickly, right? There's the pretty intern who keeps walking back and forth, right? I can obsess about her. Or I can obsess about my neighbor's new car, right? And all of a sudden, when I'm obsessing, I'm not focused on the present. And I know you brought that up earlier. You got to be focused on the present.
Yep.
And so I really encourage people to find a mentor, right? And the relationship is this, Ryan. If I was mentoring you, hey, I'd give you some things. You take them out in the world, and a week report back to me and see if they worked.
Yeah.
And 9 out of 10 times they're going to work.
Yeah, and that's an interesting concept. And I don't have a mentor for like me holistically, like 360 degree Ryan. But there was a time where I was put in charge of, large technology projects and web development projects and DevOps. And my background is in radio as an audio engineer, a board operator, a producer, a creator of content, not a creator of technology. And so, I had to go outside of my wheelhouse for a bit. But I went outside my wheelhouse and I found that creating applications and creating user experiences is no different than creating content when it comes to radio. It's just a different outlet. And, big kudos to my technology mentor, Gary Wells, who is in Northern California. He's had, those 3 things that you talk about. I mean, he's been wildly successful in technology. He's the, vice president of technology for one of the largest banks in the world. If you're using a banking application on your phone, he probably helped to develop that. He has, when you say sobriety, I drink a couple of beers every now and again. I don't have a drinking problem, or I don't obsess about drinking, and so one thing that I loved about Gary is, him and I could always, when I was in Northern California, I could always go to his house. We would hang out, have a couple of beers, talk about business, talk about technology, and he's got a couple of kids and a wife, and, all of those things that you touch on, maybe minus the couple of beers every now and again. But, those things have been extremely important to me with the way, and he doesn't ask me for anything other than he wants to know what I'm experiencing as a younger person. I'm 39. And he's a little bit older than you are, and he just wants to know how his return for our relationship is really based on him understanding a different generation and seeing how that generation interacts with technology. And we have great conversations around he says, I think when I'm building this next thing, I'm going to do A, B, and C. And now we've gotten to the point after 15 years of a relationship where now we're collaborating on things, and it's like I go, no, that's not going to work. These young kids, the millennials and the Gen Zs, they don't have time for that. They're not going to even mess with that. And there are things sometimes that he hadn't even thought about because of just the generational gap. And so we've had this nice symbiotic relationship for such a long time. And that's why I brought up that question, because I do feel like that those mentors that you have in your life are mentors that are placed within your path for a specific reason at a specific time, and they have a specific purpose. And the purpose is not to, exchange money monetarily, but exchange brain power. That's the currency of the knowledge economy.
They exchange human connectivity. Being a human is multifaceted. And I think
an understatement.
But there's a gentleman on the TED Talk, and he says, he ends his TED Talk saying the opposite of addiction is connection. The opposite of addiction is connection, is what he says. I would say, you were addicted to cigarettes. I think every human being is addicted to something: drama, coffee, exercise, drugs, alcohol, sex, gambling. It's some way of escapism, and it's okay if you can have a positive addiction. I know a guy who quit drinking. Now he runs marathons. I'll take that any day of the week. Right? I sort of became addicted to work, and in my early 20s, that served me well. That really did serve me well. I was able to get out in front of my friends who continued to drink because of that addicted to work thing.
Yeah, no, I definitely can understand that. And I think that's probably, I do smoke cigarettes, and I have a couple of beers every now and again, but my addiction is wholeheartedly content creation and doing what we're doing right now. I just, like you said earlier, I would probably do this for free. I get the opportunity to talk to individuals like yourself and other thought leaders in different spaces. And, I almost feel like every time I do an interview or talk to somebody in this particular format, I feel like I'm getting like a mini coaching session myself. I walk away with, little nuggets of information that I know that I can use and grow and learn from personally and professionally, because every single person has a different story. Your story is enlightening. Your story, talks to, the human nature and the power of the human mind and the things that the human being can overcome. And as long as you have that right, path in front of you to be able to follow. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. I appreciate you being on the show today. And, it's been wonderful, but I have another couple of questions for you before we round out the interview. I know that you developed a bulletproof playbook on how to land, keep, and thrive your dream job. Let's talk about the bulletproof playbook. Also, number one, I want to also let the listeners know where they can find out more information on, following you, whether it be social media, your website, getting the book, all that good stuff.
Okay, cool. So I don't have a book yet, but one of the things that I love that you talked about, you brought up the football analogy earlier, plays, right?
Yeah.
So what I have developed in the last 2 years is a thing called the Recovery Playbook. And it's a coaching curriculum that I've used both with our residents here at Startup Recovery as well as high-end private clients. These are C-suite executives, celebrities, athletes. And so we are launching, and this is where the technology comes into it. We are launching the Recovery Playbook platform in the month of February. And it allows for people like you to get 12 plays that help them move their lives forward. So I'll give you a couple titles, right? We have the 10 intentions. We have the right to write. We have the mask you live in. We have the digital scrub. Now, the digital scrub is a good one, Ryan. It's one of these things where, what causes us anxiety is when we look at our phone and I'm trying to look for Ryan, right? And right before Ryan is Rihanna. And Rihanna is a girl who broke my heart. And so it gives me anxiety, right? And so what we want to do with people, both executives and people in early recovery and students, is get digital scrub. Get rid of the people that give you that anxiety. So we have everybody clean off all the, what I call the lower companions off their phones, right? Yeah. They go through their social media. They get rid of their frenemies, And so that part of the play is called digital scrub. This is right in your line, Ryan, because this was a brick and mortar coaching thing that has now moving into technology. We've brought people on like you who know all this tech talk, the zeros and ones. and again, I get out of the way. The smartest guy, you guys help me go do this. And so it's really career oriented because what happens is it allows for people to get out of their own way, to use this space to take themselves to a new level. Because here's the thing, most people at 9-to-5 jobs want two things to happen. They want to get an increase in pay and they want to get an increase in title, right? And so what I try to do in this recovery playbook is allow them to get out of their own way so they don't self-sabotage. Yeah. How many times have you heard of a friend go, they run on the verge of a promotion, self-sabotage. Right on the verge of a pay raise, self-sabotage. And so what I'm trying to do, and this you brought up this earlier, is to create balanced men and women so they're using the left side of their brain and the right side of their brain. And so that's what we do with the Recovery Playbook. And that can be found at the recoveryplaybook.com.
Yeah, when you talk about a balanced person, I mean, that is the epitome of what that is. I mean, it's and I tell my daughter this all the time. Like I said earlier, you cannot let your emotions supersede your logic, your intelligence. As soon as your emotions go high, your logic goes right back down, and you can't 100%. And you can't do that. I mean, you have a 9-year-old. When little girls are 4, 5, and 6 years old, they're like figuring out this whole their emotions and all of these new things. I haven't got to the teenage years yet. I only have the one daughter, so I don't know how that's going to go. But I feel like the stage of going from a toddler to a little girl, right? And then there's that transitional element that happens there, and then another transitional element that'll happen, as they blossom into being a teenager with a whole set of other emotions, right, that are going to be different that we're going to have to deal with. But I think if you place any person in a multitude of scenarios that's a little bit outside of their comfort zone, it forces them to, learn behavior for themselves that allow them to act and react appropriately in all of those situations. And, I was in California with my uncle. He lives in Chino, in Southern California, and he has 5 daughters, and when I got married, he said to me, Ryan, I got one piece of advice for you and one only. He's like, you'll figure out your marriage because that's on you. He said, but when you have kids, take them everywhere and do everything and anything with them because that will make them well-rounded individuals. And I've always taken that to heart.
Yeah, I some daughter advice I got was daughter wants you to answer this question, right? Will you be there for me? And so every recital, every parent-teacher conference, every soccer game, I'm there. Yep. Okay. And the other thing that a guy told me about, never let your daughter see anger. It really scares little girls. And so I try my best not to show them that side of me. I have 2. I have a 7-year-old as well. Yeah.
Is that not the hardest part of the challenge? Is the showing the anger?
Yes.
Yeah. That is by far for me the hardest thing as well.
And Ryan, let me tell you this. your little girl, you are the first boy she's going to fall in love with. Remember that. So whatever you do, whatever you're modeling what she's going to fall in love with down the road. But for now, you're the first boy that she falls in love with. So as one father to another of daughters, I give you that advice, because I think to myself, okay, these girls are in love with me, right? I'm gonna present back to them a lot of love. And so I'm constantly loving them, supporting them. I too do the soccer thing, whatever they want to do.
Whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
When your 7-year-old says, "Daddy, I want to paint your nails," you go, "Here's my hands." I mean, you can see the pink wristbands I got on, you know, all the stuff that she's made me, and you know, it's funny. I come to work.
You're a good dad, right?
I come to work and people are like, "Why are you wearing pink bracelets?" I was like, "No. The question would be, why would I not be wearing pink bracelets?"
No. So I see a bunch of moms and dads on the playgrounds, and they're on their phones, and they're letting nannies raise their kids, right? And people are like, I can see some of these fathers are not engaged. And it's like, hey, the only two people I need to impress here are those two little girls. Mm-hmm. Because when I'm on my deathbed, guess who's going to be next to me? Those two little girls.
Yeah. And, you know, it's funny. My wife and I had that conversation the other day, and I was like, you know, I'm like, she's like, you already won me. You know, like, you don't need to impress me, you know? And so our sole jobs as human beings on this earth are strictly, you know, the parental duties that we have. And I guess duty is even a wrong word, because I don't feel like I have a duty to do anything. It's just part of who I am. I'm a dad, you know, and I love every minute of it. And, you know, thank you so much for the feedback, because I think that I needed to hear that from another dad of daughters about trying not to be angry. I have a high level I set a high expectation for my daughter, you know, not saying that I'm pushy, but I want her to understand, you know, what expectations are, that, you know, you need to pay attention. You need to, you know, be in the moment, and, you know, grades are not everything, but they're important to get to where you want to go. You know, getting good grades is the equivalent of a dollar bill, right? It's it's another tool in your toolbox to be able to whip that out when you need it, to be able to go where you need to go. And, you know, I think, I've had even my grandmothers be like, well, you're too hard on her. And I'm like, but Grandma, if I don't set an expectation of excellence from the very beginning, and if I don't do that now, when do I make the choice to make that happen? I can't wait until she's 12 years old and then expect excellence.
My business mentor, one of my business mentors now, is very successful. Houses in multiple cities. Here's what I once asked him, I said, hey, what's success to you? And here's what he said. He goes, success to me is happy children.
100%.
And I thought that was profound from a guy who's a multi-millionaire, you know, that it's happy children. And so what I wanted to, right? Yeah. You know, and so, you know, I will tell you that my daughters, they both got straight A's. They have lots of friends. They were student of the month, and the theme was joy, you know. So I think I'm very successful, if you know what I mean, in that department. So
I completely agree. Gregg, thank you for being on. I appreciate it. You guys go check out startuprecovery.com, the website. Follow Gregg. I'm sure he's all over social media. We really appreciate you being on Finding Your Frequency. Love the advice. I love the story. Love everything about it. You and I will definitely have to stay connected and have a little bit of lunch when I get out to LA. And
when I come to Phoenix, I'll come chase you down.
Let's do it. Sure. Let's do it. Gregg, thank you again for being on. I appreciate your time.
Okay. My pleasure, Ryan. So much. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're tuned into Finding Your Frequency right here on the Voice America Talk Radio Network. Make sure you follow us on your favorite podcatcher, whether it be Apple, iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and everywhere else podcasts are found. You can always find us at voiceamerica.com, findingyourfrequency.net. Check me out on Twitter at Radio Ryan1, at Jeff Spinney2, at Voice America TRN. We'll talk to you guys next time on the next episode of Finding Your Frequency right here on Voice America.